Picture a chameleon sitting perfectly still on a green branch, calm and quiet, blending into the leaves. Now another male climbs into view. In the space of a few seconds, that calm green body erupts. Stripes of blazing yellow flare down its sides. Its throat burns bright orange. Patches of black and turquoise flood across its skin like paint thrown at a wall, except no paint moves that fast. The whole animal has transformed from a leaf into a warning flag, and it has done it in the time it takes you to blink twice. Almost everyone watching that will reach for the same explanation. The chameleon is changing color to hide, to match its background, to disappear. And that explanation, the one you have almost certainly been told your entire life, is mostly wrong. Chameleons do not primarily change color to camouflage. The truth is far stranger and far more interesting. That flash of color is not an attempt to vanish. It is the exact opposite. It is the animal shouting. This is the story of why chameleons really change color, how they physically pull it off using a trick that sounds like science fiction, and why the camouflage myth has survived so long when the real reason is standing in plain sight. Let's start by killing the myth properly, because it is worth understanding why it feels so believable. A chameleon at rest often does sit there in soft greens and browns, tucked among leaves, genuinely hard to spot. So the camouflage idea is not completely baseless. That resting color really does help it hide. But here is the catch. The dramatic changes, the ones that made chameleons famous, the sudden blazes of orange, red, yellow, white and black, do not help an animal disappear into green leaves. They do the reverse. They make the chameleon stand out violently against its background. If the goal were to hide, turning bright orange on a green branch is the worst possible move. No animal trying to be invisible chooses a color that screams for attention. So the biggest, boldest color changes cannot be about camouflage, because they achieve the opposite of camouflage. Once you notice that, the whole myth falls apart, and the real question appears. If it is not hiding, then what on earth is it saying? Before we get to the message, we have to understand the machine, because the way a chameleon changes color is genuinely unlike almost anything else in the animal world, and understanding it is the key to everything. Most animals that change color, an octopus, a squid, a flatfish, do it with pigment. They have tiny sacs of colored ink in their skin that they can squeeze wider or pinch smaller, mixing browns, yellows, and reds like a painter. For a long time, scientists assumed chameleons worked the same way, just shuffling pigment around. But the bright, jewel-like colors, the electric blues, the shining whites, the metallic yellows, never quite made sense as pigment, because those colors are extremely hard to make with ordinary pigment at all. The real answer was only pinned down properly in recent years, and it is astonishing. Chameleons do not paint. They build mirrors. Under the outer skin of a chameleon sit special cells called iridophores, and packed inside those cells are countless tiny crystals made of a substance called guanine, one of the same building blocks that spell out DNA. These crystals are arranged in an orderly lattice, like a microscopic grid of glass beads. Now here is the crucial part. When light hits that grid of crystals, the crystals reflect it back. But which color of light bounces back depends entirely on how far apart the crystals are spaced. Light travels in waves, and different colors have different wavelengths. Blue light has short waves, red light has long waves. When the crystals are packed close together, the tight spacing reflects the short waves, and the skin shines blue and green. When the crystals are pulled further apart, the wider spacing reflects the longer waves, and the skin flares yellow, orange, and red. The chameleon is not changing what color it is made of. It is changing the distance between crystals and letting physics choose the color. This is called structural color, color made by structure and geometry rather than by dye. It is the same reason a soap bubble shimmers with rainbows, or a peacock feather blazes blue when the feather itself contains no blue pigment at all. The chameleon has this power built into its living skin, and it can adjust it on command. So how does the animal actually work the controls? This is the part that turns a science lesson into something almost magical. The chameleon changes the spacing of those crystals by changing the state of the skin cell itself. When the animal is calm and relaxed, the iridophore cells are in one state, the crystal lattice is packed tight, the spacing is small, and the reflected color sits in the cool blues and greens that blend so well with leaves. When the animal becomes excited, aroused, angry, or ready to display, its nervous system and hormones flood the skin, the cells change, and the crystal lattice stretches. The crystals spread apart, the spacing grows, and the reflected color leaps up the scale into hot yellows, oranges, reds, and whites. Relaxed means tight crystals and cool colors. Excited means spread crystals and hot colors. In a very real sense, you can read a chameleon's inner state by reading the geometry of the crystals in its skin, made visible as color. The emotion is not hidden inside the animal. It is broadcast on the surface, in light, for anyone who knows how to look. Now we can finally answer the real question. What is the chameleon saying? Because color, for a chameleon, is not decoration, it is language. It is the animal's main way of talking. Watch two male panther chameleons meet on the same branch, both wanting the same territory, and you will see a full conversation happen in color, without a single sound. As they square off, both males light up, ramping their colors brighter and bolder, each trying to outdazzle the other. The brighter, more intense male is effectively saying, "I am bigger, I am stronger, I am not backing down." Color here is a threat, a flex, a display of dominance meant to intimidate the rival into leaving without a fight. And it works. Very often the weaker male reads the message, and instead of fighting, he does something just as dramatic. He surrenders in color. His bright display drains away. He turns dull, dark, and muted, a visible white flag that says, "You win. I am no threat. Please do not attack." A whole duel settled, a winner and a loser decided, and often not a single bite exchanged. The entire argument fought and won in flashes of light on skin. Then there is love, and here the color language shifts completely. When a male courts a female, he does not throw the same aggressive war paint at her. He puts on a different show, a courtship display, often softer and more elaborate, meant to charm rather than threaten, and the female answers back in color too. A female who is receptive shows one set of colors, but a female who is already carrying eggs and wants nothing to do with a male can flare into a furious, unmistakable pattern of dark colors and hot spots that says clearly, "Go away, I am not interested." The male reads it and, if he is wise, backs off. So the same skin that fights wars also negotiates romance. Both partners reading each other's mood in real time, painted across the body. This is the true purpose of the famous color change, not to disappear, but to communicate. Mood, dominance, threat, submission, courtship, rejection, all spoken in a silent, glowing language that other chameleons understand instantly. But communication is not the only job that color does, and the second job is even more surprising because it has nothing to do with talking at all. It has to do with staying alive in the cold. A chameleon is cold-blooded, which means it cannot make its own body heat. It has to borrow warmth from its surroundings, mostly from the sun, and this is where color becomes a survival tool in a completely different way. Dark colors absorb heat. Light colors reflect it. So watch a chameleon early in the morning when the air is still cool and its body is sluggish from the cold night. Very often it will turn noticeably darker, its skin shifting toward deep browns and blacks. That darkening is not a mood, it is a strategy. By going dark, the chameleon turns its own skin into a solar panel, soaking up as much of the weak morning sun as it can, warming its blood and its muscles faster so it can start moving, hunting, and defending its patch. Then, once the day heats up and the sun grows fierce, the same animal can pale toward lighter colors to reflect the excess heat and avoid cooking. The chameleon is using the very same crystal machinery, the same living mirrors, not to send a message, but to manage its own temperature. One tool, two completely different uses. A billboard for its feelings and a thermostat for its body. And the color is only the headline act of an animal built entirely out of strange equipment. Look at the eyes. A chameleon's two eyes sit in tall, cone-shaped turrets, and each one can swivel completely independently of the other. One eye can be scanning forward for food, while the other rolls backward to watch for a hawk. Between them, they sweep a full circle, a nearly complete 360-degree view of the world, so almost nothing sneaks up on a chameleon unseen. But the moment it spots prey, something clever happens. Both eyes snap forward and lock onto the same target together. And now the two overlapping images give the chameleon precise depth perception, judging distance with pinpoint accuracy. That accuracy feeds the most explosive weapon it owns, the tongue. A chameleon's tongue is a biological catapult. Coiled and loaded inside its mouth, it can be launched out at astonishing speed, often more than the full length of the animal's own body, and it reaches full stretch in a fraction of a second, faster than you can consciously react. The tip is a soft, sticky, muscular club that slams into an insect and yanks it back into the mouth before the prey even registers the strike. Independent swiveling eyes to find the target, stereo vision to range it, and a spring-loaded tongue to seize it, all wrapped around that shape-shifting, color-changing skin. Every part of this animal is a specialist tool, so where does that leave the camouflage story we began with? Not entirely dead, but firmly put in its place. The chameleon's resting color, the soft green or brown it wears when it feels safe and unbothered, genuinely does help it blend in. And that quiet baseline probably is shaped in part by the need to avoid being eaten. Camouflage is real, but it is the background layer, the default setting, the animal simply not shouting. The dramatic changes, the ones that built the chameleon's entire reputation, ride on top of that baseline, and they are almost never about hiding. They are about being seen. The myth got it exactly backward. We looked at the most attention-grabbing color change in the animal kingdom and decided it was a disappearing act, when in truth it is the loudest voice in the forest. A chameleon changing color is not trying to vanish, it is trying to be heard. And once you understand that, you start to see the chameleon differently. This is an animal that wears its heart, quite literally, on its skin. Its anger, its fear, its desire, its readiness to fight or flee, its very body temperature, all of it painted across the surface in living light. All of it controlled by microscopic crystals shifting a few billionths of a meter closer or further apart. It is one of the most sophisticated communication systems on the planet, and it runs without a single sound. But that extraordinary body is bound to one place. The great majority of the world's chameleons live in Madagascar and across Africa, and many of them are locked to specific patches of forest, unable to simply pick up and leave. As those forests are cut, burned, and broken apart, the branches that these animals depend on are vanishing. And a creature this specialized, this finely tuned to its exact home, has almost nowhere else to go. The living billboard has plenty to say, if only the forest it speaks in survives to hear it. So here is what we want to know from you. Now that you know the truth, what surprised you most? That the colors are built from tiny crystals rather than paint? That a chameleon can turn dark just to warm itself in the morning sun? Or that two males can fight an entire duel and settle it without a single bite, purely in flashes of light? Tell us in the comments. And if this changed the way you see one of the most misunderstood animals on Earth, stay with us. Because the natural world is full of things everyone thinks they understand, and almost no one actually does.